Männer, es war ein langer Krieg. Ihr habt tapfer und stolz für euer Vaterland gekämpft. Seid eine besondere Truppe, die ineinander...
Hey everyone, this is the Hydra Hut, and let's talk about Deadman 3. So this one is by Neal Adams, written, and the art as well. I believe he also does the coloring. A little history on Deadman, because I don't really know how popular he is. I think when this first came out, most people hadn't really heard of him. Deadman is Boston Brand. He was one of a couple brothers who worked at a circus, and he was assassinated for, as far as he knows, no reason. When he died, he was given... he wasn't really given. He was basically forced into the role of Deadman. He wears this skin constantly, or this is his old suit. When he died, it became his skin, basically. He's a ghost, nobody can see him, and he's going to remain a ghost until he can figure out why he died and who killed him. The old original Deadman, I don't believe, ever actually discovered who killed Boston Brand. I didn't make it far enough into the series. Neal Adams wasn't the original artist, but he was the one that basically made Deadman famous, because Neal Adams can art like a boss. Even when he was getting started, his stuff was pretty amazing. And even to this day, nobody's been able to touch his Deadman. Anytime they got a cover artist or somebody to cover for him, they always did just kind of a pathetic job in comparison, and fans were generally displeased. The only person that really ever came close to him was our boy Kelly Jones. I did his Swamp Thing. He also does the best Batman, in my opinion. Anyway, Kelly Jones did a Deadman as well, but his is the one that looks more like a corpse. He's got jaunting hip bones. His skin is like sunken around his bones. It's much darker, like what Kelly does. But anyway, let's get into this one. This is number 3 of 6. The cover is actually very, very accurate for what's going on in the book. The book is total chaos. I'm sure most of you probably saw DNC's review of number 2, which he called a fever dream, which is pretty accurate. I thought it was hilarious and brilliant, and Neal Adams is kind of crazy now, so I guess that's kind of why I like it. But the cover does a good job getting across the chaos. It also, you'll notice that it's got all these lines, right? But these ones look a little bit different. Well, that's because it's actually words. And if you buy it, you can sit there and stare at it and try and figure out what in the heck it says. But I'll go ahead and read it for you right now. In the trembling evil of the world, a place is set aside so that souls in bitter torment may lick their wounds and hide. Rama holds a court, in care, though cold, and Stygian gloom enfolds. The blossom that is Nanda Parbat, there the balance of life is told. And that actually shows up in the book right near the end. I'm not going to tell you, what it really is pertaining to, but it's like a huge part of this book. And I thought that was pretty cool that he just kind of hit it in the lines on this. And it's actually kind of funny. There's a typo in the book. They, instead of gloom, they put cold a second time. And I thought it was just like bad script writing, but it was actually a typo, as I found out by reading this instead. It's pretty nifty. Let's dig in. So it starts off right where book 2 ended, which is after this big guy here, Tiny, just got done bludgeoning this dude to death with his fists. In the background, you can see the Spectre of Vengeance, the Stranger, Etrigan, our boy the Demon, and Deadman. It's basically total madness going on right now. This is the guy that actually shot Deadman, and Tiny beat him to death while Deadman was taking over his body. So he's come out. Tiny's absolutely confused, doesn't know what's happening. And in the background, we got all of the powerful entities basically mocking the situation, and Deadman is disgusted by how they're treating it. But Basically, the spirit of vengeance agrees with Tiny that he was used by a tool. The stranger, who was the one that convinced Deadman to take Tiny and do this and change time for him, is like, if a tool, a willing tool, and then Etrigan, and a clever one at that, had I one, I'd doff my hat. And this, Etrigan rhymes all the time, and it's stupid and hilarious. Anyway, as we move along, we immediately jump into this madness. I'm just going to call them the All-Powerfuls. They're basically arguing about whether or not it was right to bring Deadman here and do what they did. There's been a lot of time adjusting. And, of course, the cops show up to, and because this is real life happening here, cops end up showing up to question Tiny over what happened. And we jump back to Tiny inside with, oh, why did I forget his name? Abu? Where you at? Vishnu. His name's Vishnu, I guess. I forget. Must be Vishnu. Anyway. Tiny is discussing with Vishnu that they were questioned for very long. Vishnu makes a joke about how Tiny's much smarter than he used to be, and his Deadman, who is Boston brand, Deadman, who is eternally blunt, is like, well, it's not really Tiny, and Vishnu's like, yeah, I figured that. I got you. Spirit of Vengeance pops in and is like, the cops are gone. If you want, I can just move time forward a little bit so we can get things along. And Brand's like, ah! And then he turns to tell Vishnu, and Vishnu's already asleep. You can see the nice dramatic lines to illustrate that he was turning his head. As Brand's leaving, he looks back and thanks Vishnu. Vishnu is actually the one who first knew that Deadman was going to get trapped. He didn't know what was going to happen, but he knew there were big plans for Deadman. He's kind of a mystic, I guess. He works at the circus, which is where they are. I guess I should have said that earlier. But as he's leaving, he thanks Vishnu, and Vishnu basically peers over his shoulder and is like, you're going to need all the help you can get, friend. And he goes into Tiny disappears into the trailer. And this is when the madness starts all over again. So inside, this is Boston Brand's brother, Cleveland, his dad, Bobby, his mom, I don't remember what her name is, but she works at the circus, at Bobby's circus, and she is basically the top act. Bobby does the triple flip, which is apparently a big deal. And he's trying to leave his old company and come join this one, because in the last book, his partners died. And she doesn't want him back, just stealing the show, showing up out of nowhere, because when Cleveland got good, him and his partners just up and abandoned everybody. And then we can see Deadman as Tiny about to barge in. Here we get Cleveland and Bobby arguing about just what's happening. It's all backstory, pretty much. And it's basically telling a little bit more about Boston Brand's family and what's going on with them. As Tiny comes bulging in, he has no tact, so he just immediately starts barreling into them about his brothers. The mom and the dad freak out. They don't know why this stranger is just acting all personal with them and getting into their family business, and he tells Tiny to butt out. Boston Brand, who strikes first and asks questions later, of course, punches his dad in the face, but you don't mess with Bobby. And Bobby plants Tiny, who is much younger and huge, and he still gets worked over. So, of course, Deadman, and this is where we can see Deadman's powers really working, he jumps from Tiny over to his brother Cleveland to continue the fight, which is kind of turning into his signature move throughout this book. He immediately grabs his dad, and his dad's like, no, boy, you don't treat your father that way. Fighting ensues. And here we get to see, again, that Bobby is the baddest of the brands, and he beats the hell out of Cleveland, or Deadman as Cleveland. Finally, they kind of come to terms and start discussing their past, and this is where we start to learn who did it and why it happened, and this is where the real core of the story really starts coming out. And if you've been reading the series, you got to keep going to this one, because this is going to explain all the stuff that book 2 and book 1 just kind of assumed that you would already know. I don't want to get too much into it, but basically Deadman is causing all kinds of drama here with his powers, and the Spirit of Vengeance, or Spectre of Vengeance, pops in, rips him out of Cleveland's head, and shrinks him down into basically like a Deadman capsule. That's some pretty awesome... Look at this art. This is the real reason why you read Neal Adams. Anyway, throws him into Bobby Brand, the dad's head, so that Boston, Deadman, can get the answers he's been looking for. We get this freaking awesome little as he explodes open inside of his dad's mind. Earlier on, he was actually inside Tiny's mind just like this, and it looked much, much different. So he's kind of tripping out over how everybody's insides are different, and then he kind of, figures out how to get around, and he starts searching for these memories that are going to lead him to the answers he needs. And he sees his dad watching over his mom, who's in the hospital looking deathly sick. Boston Brand can tell that she's not going to make it much longer. And then we see the dad get up and start to leave, and Boston said, Deadman, I'll just call him Deadman, is really focused on his dad's face, and we get this close-up showing the distress on his dad's face and how he's never seen his dad look like that before. And then that's when it strikes him that his mom's going to die, and he freaks out because he doesn't want his mom to die. But then he realizes these are memories, and his mom doesn't die, she's still alive. So he's tripping out on why his dad would be acting this way, and he's got to follow him. So he starts following his dad in the memories. As he comes to him, I guess the memory, Bobby as a memory, kind of has some sentience in the brain, because he tells Deadman, who he actually thinks is Cleveland right now. He doesn't think it's Boston. Everybody thinks Boston is long dead, long gone, and he just assumes that this is Cleveland. And he tells him he has to get back, and he runs away and summons these freaking clowns to fight off Deadman. So, of course, Deadman throws hands. That's basically what he does. And as he's battling him off, we get some pretty funny dialogue, some pretty awesome fight scenes, some just demented-looking clowns. Also, we get lots of good sound effects, which is nice. Is they don't look just like Fap. They don't just look like he pulled them out of paint shop. Anyway, as he's fighting these balloons, the Spirit of Vengeance shows up again, or Spectre of Vengeance shows up and offers him a needle, because these are just balloons, they're figments of his imagination, and he's done watching Boston box with himself in a freaking dream. So he hands him some needles to pop them. Deadman goes crazy popping the balloons. This one starts to get away. The Spirit of Vengeance, or Spectre of Vengeance, shows up with a witticism and a pop. And the reason I'm not going into the dialogue is because I want you people to read this. It's good. Crazy, but good. And finally, Deadman and Spectre of Vengeance make it back to where the rest of the memory is happening. Still, Bobby is trying to plead with him not to come here, and that's when the Spectre tells Deadman that his dad actually thinks he's his brother. He doesn't realize it's him. And do not tell him it's him. So, that's when the story starts to move along, and we find out that the dad was talking to some people. And the people he were talking to were particularly bad people and had something to do with the death. And it's really, really hard for Boston to handle this, what his dad did. Also, what's interesting is his dad looks exactly like Boston did in book 1. Boston. Which is, I thought, kind of neat. Of course, we get Deadman freaking out, because that's what he does through most of this book. It's, I guess, just part of being dead, confused, angry, and trapped in the spirit world forever. But he's he's freaking because of what his dad did, and he immediately accuses him as Cleveland. And this is where we get a whole lot of information filled in. The nice thing about it, because it's mostly just dialogue, is Neal Adams does very animated art. So there's, I don't know, the panels are interesting to look at, even though there's really nothing happening. And being that Neal's kind of crazy, the dialogue's kind of crazy and all over the place. It all makes sense and everything. It's just not normal, not what you would expect from a normal human interaction, I guess. I don't know. I like it, but it's definitely different. But that differentness really kind of helps you keep moseying on through it. And then here is where we finally get the bit that I read off from the title page, or from the cover. This is where we find out who wrote him the note and why. And we find out basically, well, here, and here, we find out what happened to his brother Aaron and his sister Zeta. And we can assume that Boston is going to go take care of that in book 4. And at the end of this, we got some primer pages for the Terrifics. The art looks pretty cool. I didn't actually read it, though, because I don't know. Just not that interested in the Terrifics. Anyway, that was Deadman. I highly suggest you go out and pick it up. If you haven't read 1 and 2, you definitely want to. You'll probably be lost. It does kind of read like its own book, and it will fill you in on all the blanks. If you didn't read 1 and 2, you're not going to be sitting there wondering what happened. Once you're done, you'll kind of have a good idea of what's going on. But just be prepared. Neal Adams puts like 120% effort into this stuff, and he's ancient, and his writing is just, it's great, but you got to be ready for it. So yeah, Hail Hydra, baby. Thanks for watching, and you guys have a good day.